BookTube, it's Angie. You can see a little bit more of my library here. I've been switching things around, seeing if I can get a better shot here. I know the shelves in the back look a little bit hoarderish, but I live in a small house and it's the best I can do for the time being. But I'm working on one day you coming online and seeing this amazing, well done, built-in bookshelf room behind me, but that's in the future. So I'm here today to talk about The Paying Guests by Sarah Waters. It's her new book that just came out. It came out September 16th. I got an ARC of this from, I think it was Penguin Books' First to Read program. I was really excited to get this because I am a fan of her writing. I haven't read all of her books, but from the few I have read, when I saw this come up, I wanted to grab it. And it moved a little bit slower than some of the other ones I've read. It was still really good. I was still really interested in the story, but it's kind of a slow burn. You can kind of feel that there's tension from the start that's going to build up into something. It's just, it takes forever to get there. So anyway, about the story. The story takes place in 1922 London. It's just a few years after World War I has ended, and everyone is still trying to gather themselves, really. They're trying to pick up the pieces and rebuild the cities and their lives. And the story focuses on Mrs. Ray. She lives in London with her daughter Frances. Mrs. Ray has lost both her sons and her husband to the war, and so she's trying to make ends meet with just her and her daughter, and she's struggling a little bit. So her daughter, who's they call her a spinster in the story, but she's only about, I think she's like maybe 26, 27, somewhere in there. And her daughter comes up with the idea of, well, why don't we open the house to boarders, which is something that was pretty common back then. And so they decide to do that. Their first tenants are the Barbers, Leonard and Lillian. And Lillian has kind of a bohemian flair to her. She's very like gypsy spirited, likes a lot of doodads and sparkles and wild clothes. And Leonard seems very much more sort of, I don't want to say uptight, but he's very much more clean cut, I would say. Very much more like put together. But he sort of indulges Lillian with her, I guess, whims that she likes to decorate with and dress in. And outwardly, they give the appearance that they're a really good couple. Outwardly, they have that sort of joking banter with each other, and everything looks great between them. But as the story progresses, you see behind closed doors, there's some darker stuff going down. Leonard turns out to be a bit of an ugly drunk. He is very emotionally abusive to Lillian, which makes me suspect that if he's that emotionally abusive, they probably had a physically abusive relationship as well. And I think as a form of escape, really, from the dreariness and depression that she was experiencing from her marriage, Lillian seeks out Frances, Mrs. Ray's daughter, Frances kind of runs the house for Mrs. Ray. And she seeks out Frances in a friendship, and they spend a lot of time together, and then the friendship sort of develops into a flirtation. And then one night it happens very quickly. All of a sudden they seem to just go at each other, not violently. They actually Lillian decides she's just gonna go in for the move and start making out with Frances, and somehow Frances talks her into having sexy times in the pantry. And from there it just blows up into this relationship. And then the story becomes, how do you navigate a lesbian relationship in the confines of that historical time period where, I mean, the LGBT community still struggles with acceptance now, but I think they've gotten more of a window now than they had back then, as far as people being more accepting of them and not, there's less of that it's a mental illness. And because in the story they talk about, there's a point where Frances mentions that her mom suspected her of having these, I forget how her mom worded it. It was like queer inclinations or something like that, her mom put it as. And at the time when her mom had her first suspicions that Lillian might have this behavior, her mom talked to Frances's father about wanting to take her to the doctor to have her glands checked. Because that's where lesbianism usually resides, is in the glands. So it just cracked me up, that the mentality that, I mean, there's still some bad mentality out there now, but considering what we were back then, I think at least we've made some improvement. So that's a good part of the story. But then a crime comes in. I'm trying to be a little bit vague about this because I don't want to give away everything in the story. A crime is written to the story, and then the crime and the investigation and everything that comes after that, the sort of repercussions of that takes over the story after, I think that comes in around 300 pages. The book itself is almost 600 pages, and I think the crime comes in around 300 pages, I think, somewhere in there. Once you get into the crime part of the story, to me it kind of felt like the relationship between Lily and Frances is sort of in the background. It's not quite as in the forefront, even though their relationship does play a part in the crime. It sort of takes a back seat to everything else going on. So there's a lot that this story brings up that I found really interesting as far as the views on gay and lesbian relationships. They talk about pro-life, pro-choice beliefs and practices in the 1920s, and how crime investigations went down, and what our sort of CSI type skills were back then. So there's a lot that's really interesting to the story. The thing that might be a struggle for some people with this one is the pace is a lot slower. It's, like I said, it's a very slow burn into the main part of the story, because once the crime element comes in, it picks up and it starts moving really fast. But it's sort of that character building up to then that might turn some people off if you're one of those instant gratification type people with your reading. This is not that. This one, you gotta work at it a little bit. But there is a really good story in here, so I definitely recommend it if you're already an established Sarah Waters fan. If you haven't read any of her books yet, I wouldn't recommend starting with this one. I would say start with something like Affinity or Fingersmith, maybe. Might be a little bit easier. And then maybe come back to this one once you've kind of gotten used to her writing style. A lot of her books tend to be written around Victorian era. This one, it's a little bit outside her box because it's a little bit later than she typically writes, but there was still a lot of that Victorian element in the writing. There was something that was almost Dickensian to me in some of what she was saying, which I was really impressed with, and I actually really liked. There was one scene that really cracked me up, that I think it was just one of my favorite scenes, where there was a point where Lillian and Frances were in Lillian's room having busy times, and her mom is out, Frances's mom is out running errands or visiting a neighbor or something. She comes back unexpectedly, and she thinks Frances is supposed to be doing housekeeping around the house. Frances meets her out in the hallway, all flustered and red in the face, and trying to straighten her clothes and everything. And she was saying, "Oh yeah, I was just chilling with Lillian here, just, hanging out." And her mom was like, "Why are you all red in the face?" She's like, "Oh, Lillian was teaching me a dance move." And then she comes up with this theory that if she gives her mom a little bit of a sin, then it'll distract her mom's suspicions off of a bigger one. So she's like, "And we were smoking." Her mom's just kind of shakes her head and walks off, and I just loved that scene. But yeah, I do recommend this one for Established Waters fans. I didn't absolutely love the ending on this. The ending kind of fell flat a little bit for me. I was expecting something a little bit stronger at the very end, but other than that, I really did like this one. And if you do like this one and are feeling the LGBT vibe, I recently read another one that was really good called Shakespeare's Sonnets. This is a tiny, tiny book by Samuel Park. I think it was in my top 5 favorite reads of the year so far. I mentioned This Burns My Heart. This is also written by Samuel Park, and because I loved this one so much, I picked up this one. This one is historical fiction taking place in 1960s and 70s Korea. This one is around World War II era, 1948 at Harvard. And this is about 2 guys. I'm a little bit confused about the names. I think the names are Jean and Adam, but Jean in this book is spelled Jean, and that's the female form. When I see Jean as a man's name, I want to say it's Jean, because I think it's like, the European spelling. But I think it's meant to be Jean and Adam. Anyway, Jean and Adam meet in a drama. Well, I don't know if they meet, but they see each other across campus, and they end up officially meeting in a drama course in Harvard. Jean picks up on this and sort of uses that information and that theory as a way to kind of woo Adam, and over time it actually starts to work, and Jean proves himself pretty pamp. There was a scene where he sets up a dinner date, or I don't know if it's a dinner date, but he sets up a date for Adam to meet him in the theater at Harvard, and they're sitting there talking about Shakespeare and everything, and Jean says to Adam, "We are all players, both of us, and tonight to ourselves we're true." And he moves in to kiss Adam, and Adam says, "Well, what if somebody sees us?" And he says, "Well, they'll be terribly jealous, because nothing is quite as upsetting as seeing strangers happy." It's like, wow, that's pretty awesome. It's kind of funny because Jean helps Adam. He helps him get over his fears of what people think, and he helps him embrace what he is. But at the same time, Jean admits that he wishes he could be more like Adam, and he could be more accepted for being who he is, because he's very, well, he's not super open about it, but he's less about hiding it. He still wants to keep it a little bit secret because he doesn't want to challenge his academic career, because he's not in the same financial position as Adam. If Jean gets thrown out of school for something like that, then he has to go back home and like work in the family store, and he doesn't really want that life. So he has his own reasons to keep it under wraps, but he does it in a very much more lax way than Adam does, and he doesn't have the same constant paranoia, or at least to the same level that Adam does. It's funny because at one point he tells Adam, "Because I've never had the acceptance you've had, I know I can live without it." And I thought that was such a powerful line. But then at the same time, he later tells Adam that he wishes he could be more like him, and he could have that acceptance and the perfect life, and be able to walk into all the cool clubs and not get looks and everything. So there was such an interesting story here. Jean and Adam made a really sweet, realistic, likable couple that you wanted to root for, and you want them to get all the things they want and not be villainized for them, because there's no reason they should be. If you take out the fact that they're both of the same sex, this is the same romance you would find anywhere else. They go through the same emotions, the same problems, they're in the same school environment. The only thing is their type of love is being villainized, and told to be kept under wraps. And so I think it's an important read for anybody to read, straight, gay, whatever. I think it's an important read for anyone to look at, because it makes you think about how stupid it is to do that to people. I mean, why would you give people shit about being in love with somebody? Seriously, of all the things. Like, really? You're gonna get in their business because they're in love with somebody you don't approve of? Who gives a shit? Now, my thing has always been, if you guys are happy and nobody is getting hurt and it's not an abusive relationship, I don't care. It's not my business. You know? I don't go into great detail about what I do in my romantic life. You know, I don't give you guys details, you know, shot by shot of what my husband and I do. So I'm not going to ask anybody else. It's like, I just want people to be happy. If you're happy, we're cool. As long as you're not abusing and you're not being abused, I'm all for you. So I think this is good in that it opens up people's eyes to that, and it'll show you that it's just stupid to hate on people for that. These two guys, they struggle so hard to just have what everybody else has without even thinking about it. Yeah, I definitely recommend this one. Just for Samuel Park's writing alone. I mean, he makes some brilliant sentences in this book. And so, yeah, highly recommend this one. It's pretty easy to find on Amazon. I will link it below for you. I guess that's about it. I had some good reads this time around. So, yeah, that's about it. So, yeah, definitely check those out. I have a kind of an unexpected book haul from last night. I went to go look for some Halloween stuff and found some books too. So I found some cute stuff, so I'll do a haul video right after this. But yeah, guys, that's about it for today. So happy readings, and yeah, go check these out. They're really good. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.